I'm Jane, 24 years old and fresh out of college, trying to navigate my first real job in a new city. When I moved to Seattle, finding a place to stay was tough, but eventually, I found a listing for a shared apartment with Tessa, who was around my age. She seemed friendly during the initial meetup, and the place was cozy, so I thought, why not? It was affordable, and Tessa seemed nice enough. After moving in, I quickly noticed Tessa had a few peculiar habits. The one that really caught my attention was her diary. She never let it out of her sight, which struck me as odd. It was this small, black, leather-bound book, always either in her hand or tucked under her pillow. Once, I asked her about it, just making small talk, but she brushed it off, laughing and saying, "Oh, just my thoughts and secrets." I shrugged it off at first, figuring everyone has a right to their privacy. But the curiosity ate at me. Over the next few weeks, more strange things started happening. Every now and then, I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find her standing at the door of my room, just watching. She'd always have a weak excuse, like just checking if you were asleep, and I'd force a laugh, pretending it didn't unsettle me. One day, while Tessa was at work, I noticed she'd left the diary on her bedside table. The door to her room was slightly open. It was tempting, like an itch I couldn't ignore. A part of me thought, you shouldn't invade her privacy, but curiosity won out. I made my way over, glancing around like a criminal. My hands shook as I fumbled with a hairpin, trying to pick the lock. To my surprise, it clicked open easily. The first few pages seemed harmless enough. Casual notes about her day, complaints about work, typical diary stuff. But as I flipped further, the tone changed. Each entry grew darker, describing how she would watch people, follow them. She used terms like subjects and targets. There was one entry about a girl she had met at a coffee shop, a girl who had gone missing a week later. My heart pounded as I kept reading, realizing these weren't just ramblings. The dates matched with recent disappearances I'd heard about on the news. The most chilling part came when I found an entry dated a few days before I moved in. She had written about me, how she was excited to have me move in, calling me her perfect subject. My stomach twisted, and my mouth went dry as I read the last entry. Tonight's the night to write her end. My mind raced. Was she planning something for tonight? I quickly snapped the diary shut, shoved it back under her pillow, and dashed to my room, pretending nothing had happened. I was trembling, my mind filled with panic, trying to figure out what to do. That night, I pretended to be asleep, every muscle in my body tense, listening for any sound. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, the quiet creak of my door opening. I kept my eyes closed, breathing steady, willing my body to stay calm. I could sense her standing there, feel her presence as she watched me. A minute passed, then 2. Finally, the door closed again, and I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As soon as the sun rose, I grabbed my essentials and left the apartment without a word. I never went back for the rest of my things. I called the police anonymously, telling them about the diary, but I never found out what happened after. A few months later, I saw a news report about a girl who had gone missing in my old neighborhood. I'll never know if Tessa was involved, but the thought that she might be out there, watching and waiting for her next subject, still keeps me up at night. Seattle's a big city, but now I can't shake the feeling that she could be anywhere, maybe even watching me, waiting for another chance. I'm Jake, 21 years old, and a junior studying psychology at a small college in Portland, Oregon. I transferred here for a fresh start, and since campus housing was packed, I found a shared apartment with another guy named Sam through a roommate listing. He seemed normal enough during our initial meeting, quiet, polite, and super organized. He had this calm vibe, and I figured we'd get along fine, maybe even become friends. The first week was pretty standard. Sam mostly kept to himself, and we'd exchange the usual hey and see ya as we came and went. But I started noticing these little notes taped up around the apartment. At first, they were just simple reminders on bright yellow sticky notes. Stuff like, "Please keep dishes clean," and "Don't forget to lock the door." It was weird, but I didn't think much of it. Sam was obviously just particular about certain things, and hey, no harm done, right? But then the notes started getting specific, like really specific. I remember one morning I found a note in the bathroom saying, "You didn't flush at 2:33 a.m. I blinked at it, trying to remember if I had gone to the bathroom that late. That one threw me off, but I laughed it off and ignored it. A few days later, another note appeared in the kitchen. "You spent 17 minutes in the shower." Okay, weird, but maybe he's just really obsessed with water usage or something. But the notes didn't stop there. They kept appearing, each one creepier than the last. One night, I found a note on the inside of my bedroom door that read, "You talked to yourself for 4 minutes and 22 seconds. My skin prickled. I knew I sometimes muttered things to myself, but the fact that Sam was keeping track felt invasive. Why would he care about stuff like that? I told myself he probably just had some harmless quirks, and maybe didn't realize how unsettling it was. Then, I had a friend, Emma, come over to study one night. The next morning, there was a note on my nightstand that read, "She left at 1:47 a.m. This wasn't funny anymore. Sam hadn't even seen Emma. She'd come and gone without him around. Yet he'd somehow known when she left, to the exact minute. I crumpled the note and shoved it in my pocket, trying to shake off the creeping feeling that Sam was somehow always watching. Finally, I decided to confront him. That night, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at a spot on the wall. I hesitated, but then walked up and said, "Sam, the notes need to stop. It's not okay to monitor me like this." He looked up at me with these cold, almost empty eyes, his expression unchanged. Then he simply said, "I'm just making sure everything stays organized, Jake. It's for our safety." His words sent a chill down my spine, but he wouldn't say anything else. A few days later, while looking for my charger in the living room, I spotted something tucked under the couch. It was a small, dark notebook. My stomach turned as I opened it and realized it was filled with pages upon pages of notes about me. Detailed, time-stamped entries like 2:33 a.m. Went to bathroom, but didn't flush. 4:15 p.m. On the phone with mom for 9 minutes. 7:04 p.m. Muttering to himself again. I even saw entries from times when I was alone in my room. I slammed the notebook shut, my heart pounding. I wanted to confront him again, demand an explanation. But something about his cold stare held me back. That night, I packed a bag with essentials and left. I texted him to say I was moving out and wouldn't be back. He never replied, but sometimes, late at night, I wonder if he still has that notebook, writing down every little thing about me from wherever he's watching now. I'm Alex, 26, just moved to Chicago for a new job. I thought I'd lucked out when I found a place with Jordan, a chef who loved to cook. At first, it was great. He'd leave leftovers labeled, "For Alex," which I thought was super considerate. He seemed to remember everything I mentioned offhand, like craving spaghetti or lasagna, and would cook it the next day. It was odd, but I figured he was just being nice. Then, it got weirder. One night, I found a handwritten recipe on the counter with a note. "This one made me think of you." The recipe was for some comfort dish I'd once told him reminded me of home. I laughed it off, but something about it felt off. The notes continued, and each was creepier than the last. Perfect for a night when you're alone. One said, "Attached to a bowl of soup on my desk." I'd find other recipes scribbled with things like, "Eat this when you're at your lowest." One night, I came home exhausted, threw myself on the bed, And there it was, a plate of food on my desk, neatly wrapped, with a label that read, "Eat it when you're most vulnerable." My stomach twisted as I stared at it, unease creeping up my spine. I didn't touch it. The next day, I told Jordan I was moving out. His smile stayed too long, eyes lingering a bit too intensely. I left as fast as I could, wondering what might have happened if I'd stayed, or if I'd eaten that last meal. Chicago's a big city, but I still look over my shoulder, wondering if he's watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to cook for me again.